Hey everyone, welcome back to the Phoenix's Tale, the weekly Harry Potter themed podcast where I am sharing my life story through a chapter by chapter analysis of the entire Harry Potter book series. I am your host, Gabe, and this week we begin Prisoner of Azkaban with chapter 1, Owl Post. So let's get to our recap here real quick before we move on. We find Harry late one evening working on a history magic essay under his bed covers so he doesn't alert the Dursleys to the fact that he is doing his magic homework. Once he puts his work away, he realizes that it's his birthday, which he hasn't liked very much in the past. As he's pondering the fact that the Dursleys had forgotten about his last two birthdays, if we remember Sorcerer's Stone, it was because Hagrid shows up in the hut on the rock in the middle of the ocean. And the previous birthday, the beginning of Chamber of Secrets, where Dobby smashes a dessert in the kitchen during Uncle Vernon's dinner party. As he's pondering that, he sees something flying toward the house, and it's not until he can see from the street lamp that it is Hedwig, another owl, carrying a third owl, Errol, the Weasley family's owl. He realizes that the unidentified owl is the Hogwarts owl, and they are all delivering Harry's first ever birthday gifts and birthday cards from Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid, as well as his Hogwarts letter for the year, the book list, and a permission slip so that he can visit the village of Hogsmeade, which begins in the third year at Hogwarts. The permission slip, yeah, I already mentioned the permission slip. Sorry about that. We close the chapter seeing Harry actually happy that for the first time in his life that it's his birthday. So this week I thought I would go in a different direction because I found it very difficult to connect to the first chapter of this book, just as I did back with Chamber of Secrets. So I'm going to talk about some bigger connections and some similarities that I see between my story and Harry's story. And we'll be diving a bit into some of the magic that I have been studying on my own. Now, I understand that this will sound a bit out there for a lot of you, but I ask that you just listen with an open mind because just stick with me. It'll make sense in a minute. So here we go. About 2 years ago now, I was at a point in my life where I was just so fucking tired of feeling stressed, anxious, angry, frustrated, and stuck in my life. Which is not surprising given that I have been unemployed for over a decade with no means to obtain proper therapy that I know I need for the PTSD. This has been going on for almost 13 years now. However, 2 years ago, I wanted to find something to do that sounded fun. I had found a couple tarot readers and a couple Reiki healers over on Instagram. I hadn't even started TikTok yet. And I thought that tarot sounded like it would help me, like actually help. And I was willing to do anything that would help me and that sounded like fun. So I dove into it. Now, at the outset, I do want to mention that I decided to embrace what my scientifically programmed mind, if you will, has always thought of practices like tarot and Reiki, and that is the placebo effect. For those who are unfamiliar with the term, let me give you a simple definition. I did write that in my notes. So, the placebo effect is something that we often see in drug trials. This is going to be the easiest for me to explain it. And for those who are involved in drug trials, please understand I am just trying to describe the placebo effect. I know drug trials are a lot more complicated than what I'm about to explain, so forgive me for that. So when doing a drug trial, the patients involved in the trial are sorted into two different groups. They're sorted into a treatment group and they're sorted into a control group. The control group is actually given something inert and safe for them, such as a sugar pill or something like lactose or starch. Something that can be made to look like the medication being tested so that all participants believe they are receiving the medication. But that is obviously to see what the medication does compared to the people taking the placebo. Okay. And this is where the placebo effect comes in. Over the years, a significant number of participants have experienced the effects of the medication being tested when they, in fact, are in the placebo group. So, in short, it works because they think they're taking the actual medication. It works because they think it works. It's just that simple. So, since I thought tarot worked for people and Reiki worked for people because of the placebo effect, I decided that I would lean into it, because the truth was I needed something to help me cut through the clutter and noise of my autistic brain to figure out what I want my life to look like. I mentioned last week that I hadn't really done that, and as a result of that, I feel like that's why I was stuck as long as I was, because I knew I didn't want to be where I wanted to be, but I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go either, if that makes any sense. So, as we've discussed a number of times now, I'm going to repeat myself a lot throughout this entire series of podcasts here. I do still need to get back on my feet and rebuild my life. I need a solid, consistent income, a livable income, basically. I want and need a new car. I want to have reconstructive surgeries to help with all the loose skin after 2 major weight losses. I want to tighten everything up again. I want to get moved back home to California because, as I've mentioned multiple times, I have gotten to a point where Michigan has become a prison, and my mother's house here has become my prison cell just because of the trauma and everything I've been through, to the point where I have been stripped bare of pretty much everything in my life. So yeah, it's no wonder I feel like I'm imprisoned in this godforsaken state and this fucking house. My apologies to anybody who enjoy, any of my fellow Michiganders who love living in Michigan. It is a beautiful state and the people are friendly. There's a lot behind why I am not so fond of the state of Michigan at the moment, and it's a personal one. Anyway, so I also have big plans for myself beyond essentially rebuilding my life from the ground up. So if, for me, embracing the placebo effect with this, with tarot specifically, is going to help me, I was more than happy to do that. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this section, I was tired of all the stress, anxiety, etc., and I needed some fun in my life. So here's how I use tarot. I'll do a reading, which means I have my own intentions that I speak as I'm shuffling the cards, and I will keep shuffling the cards. You've probably seen it. In fact, I got one of my decks here. So I'll keep shuffling the cards like this until something falls out. Because for me, that is the surest way of getting the message I need, because the universe, divine, God, my spirit guides, whoever's in charge of that is saying, okay, she needs that card. She needs that card. So that's what works for me. No hate to anybody who, does it any differently. That's the beautiful thing about spirituality when we're talking about things like, spell work and tarot and Reiki. It's what works for you. Okay, that works for me. So, and I go with whatever happens. Sometimes I will have a single card fall out. Sometimes I will have 2 or 3 stuck together. And I just trust that any of the cards that fall out, unless I get a very strong, no, put it back, that wasn't meant to fall out. Those are the cards that I need to know. So, then I used the guidebook. I grabbed the deck and the guidebook because I'm going to read through how I do this and show you how I do this. But I use the guidebook for the specific deck that I am using, because they're connected, to find the meaning. But this is where I allow the placebo effect to work its magic for me. I'll only write down from the book for, okay, let's say we got the King of Coins, the King of Pentacles here. I will only write down the court cards. Yeah, I should have bookmarked this, but you know what? We roll with it. So that's the King of Coins. So in this guidebook, if you see, we've got this whole page and this whole page. It's got from different, the author of the book and a couple other authors who contributed to the book, their descriptions of the card. And then we got the keywords when it falls out upright. We got keywords if it falls out reverse, meaning upside down. We got a description of the card. We got the meaning of the card. We have astrological attributions. We have elemental combinations. The gifts associated with this card. So loyalty, success, sufficient resources, and then any advice. Delayed gratification pays off, specifically for that. That's a lot. What I do is I write down any of that feels right to me. And I listen to what my body is telling me, not what my brain is telling me. So let's kind of go through here. This is from, and I'm going to read to you what I mean. This is from January 13th of this year, and it was a general check-in, and I wrote down that I've been feeling a bit unmotivated and unsure of things. Why am I not doing the work? WTF is going on? And it was this deck that drew me in and said, hey, I've got something to say. This particular deck, because of the energy attached to it, I do not ever read cards in reverse. Again, this is a choice, and this is the energy that feels right to me just with this deck, because when it gives me the meaning, it only gives me the meaning of the card upright, not upside down. So the energy connected to this for me knows that I'm going to read all these cards in its upright positioning, unless, because I have been doing this for 2 years, a particular card falls out. Oh, let's see. What's one here? The death card's a good one. I'm pretty knowledgeable of what the death card means on any deck and what the death in reverse means. So usually I can pull, if it's a card that I know really well, across the various decks. So what it gave me here was the Five of Swords. A battle has been fought and won. No mercy or consolation to the defeated. You are the defeated. Thanks a lot. A person or situation, and I underlined situation because that's what felt right at the time. Proved too much to overcome. Admit defeat and move on. You've lost everything except the will to continue. And then the keywords that resonated were loss, failure, and anxiety. What are you willing to do to get ahead and work on your boundaries? Then we had the Ten of Swords. Worst fears realized. Everything did go wrong. The pain and suffering were real, but the only way to go now is up. Rock bottom, overdoing, too much force, utter defeat, pain, diseases of brain and nervous system, and in parentheses I wrote down PTSD. A lot of shedding has been done. A lot needed to come to an end. Surrender. Then I got the Page of Cups. You see in others what others cannot, and you understand. Gentle, kind, romantic. Keep paying attention to dreams and your inner voice. New relationships coming to help. Enjoy gentle pleasures. Be gentle with yourself. Then Temperance came out. Balance is returning to you. You are being prepared. Once preparation is done, you will transform and be empowered. Moderation in thought and action. Need more self-control and self-discipline. You've been making adjustments. Well done. Tempering, modifying, management, timing, that got underlined. Healing got underlined. Still working on getting the right mixture and making adjustments. You're becoming stronger now. It requires more time. The Empress. You are meant to be successful in your creativity, but you've been through so much that it will take time. Montage of elements representing the richness and variety of life in its myriad forms. This is what you want to experience, and it requires a bit more time to get you healed enough to truly get going. Nurturing and caring, bounty, inner prompting, find ways to nurture yourself first. Which, given what we discussed last week, this was mid-January, reading back on it now, which I typically don't do, really lands. So that's how I use tarot, and that's how it's been helping me over the years. 2 years. So my recommendation to you is, if you are struggling to figure out what you want from your life in any capacity, find something that helps you cut through that mental noise and clutter, just as tarot helps me. It absolutely does not need to be tarot. I am not telling you to do tarot. I'm telling you to find something that works for you the way tarot has worked for me. So let's dive into this a bit further. I mentioned that I've been doing the tarot for myself for the last couple of years, give or take. And I'm beginning to shift this into how I can turn my autistic traits into strengths and tools for myself, specifically pattern recognition, hypervigilance, being an empath, and being highly sensitive. The hypervigilance specifically, I do want to know, is really a combination, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, of being autistic, growing up in a chaotic, verbally abusive environment. That's where the hypervigilance comes from. So I want to turn those things into strengths and tools to help me even further. Because the more I've learned about tarot and Reiki and all of those types of things, and knowing that everything from a scientific standpoint is energy, the more I'm beginning to see magic in the real world. And I want to go through some of these, because throughout the entire series, the Harry Potter series, there really is a lot of magic that they talk about that is not Harry Potter magic, if you will. It is what I consider real world magic. Some of these, I'm going to apologize up front. I don't mean to trigger anybody, but please keep in mind, moving forward as I work through some of these forms of real world magic, this is my perspective and my experience. I don't mean to upset anybody. And I say that because the first one is a mother's love. As with Harry, the love of his mother had for him, that allowed her to face death in the face, literally, sacrificing herself for his continued existence. Molly Weasley, taking him in essentially as another child and taking care of him. Narcissa Malfoy. Those of you familiar with the story know what I'm talking about. The love for her son, Draco. And how that saved Harry in the end as well. So the strength and the power of a mother's love is just incredible. Okay, I didn't put it in my notes, so I'm going to talk about this. When I lost my job in September 2014 because of the PTSD and not getting the appropriate help I needed, I was experiencing the three most prevalent symptoms of PTSD. That is, the sleep disturbances and the nightmares, the brain constantly replaying the event itself, no matter what I did. And those two things naturally leading to some sort of substance abuse issue for the victims. Yes, I had a drug problem. Yes, it was that drug problem that lost me my job. And still not knowing that I was dealing with PTSD at the time, and seeing how the next 5 to 8 months of my life panned out following being fired in September 2014, I realized that in kicking that drug addiction, what kept me away from those drugs was my love for my son. Because in not knowing that I was dealing with PTSD, and holy shit, I just lost my job, and holy shit, here's the key thought, how did I let my life get so off track that I could have risked altering my son's life as drastically as I could have? I could have ended up in prison, potentially. Thankfully, my employer was a lot more generous and sympathetic and understanding that something is seriously wrong with Gabe here, because she's not the kind of person to normally do this. And I could have orphaned my son. There were a couple moments there within the last 6 to 8 weeks leading up to losing my job that I vaguely remember at this point, but I'm surprised I'm still alive today, because I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but as quickly and as strongly, if you will, that consumed me, that drug addiction consumed me. There were a couple times I should have died. I'm just going to put it out there. So, thinking I had a lot more control over myself than I did, I mentioned this last week, just how insidious PTSD is from my own lived experience. It was my love and my responsibility to my son that kept me away from the drugs, from seeking more drugs after I lost my job. And having worked in healthcare for as long as I did, before moving to Michigan, this was a completely different job. It wasn't healthcare. But as long as I worked in healthcare when we were still in California, I know that the medications that they prescribe for you to deal with the withdrawal symptoms of the medications I was taking opioids. It wasn't the street drugs. It was opioids. I knew that they were no better in the end than the original drugs I was taking. So I unwisely went cold turkey, slowly started getting back into walking, started drinking a lot of water, started eating a lot of fresh fruit, anything to kind of get this flushed out through my system. But what I had also promised myself, and I cannot fathom a situation in my life at this point that I would ever lose that control again. It was a rough time. It was definitely a rough time. I wasn't going to put myself in a position where I would drastically alter my son's life, where he now had a mother who was in the legal penal system, or who was dead. I want to die in old age. I didn't want to die at the age of 41, 42. I got a lot of shit that I want to do. So it was my love for my son and my sense of responsibility to him that I held on to, and I detoxed, and I have not touched any of those since. Thankfully, I haven't needed a prescription for those same pain medications, but yeah, the magic of a mother's love can perform miracles. Okay. The next bit of magic is deep friendships. So let's look at Harry's closest friends. He's got Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid. And being able to truly be oneself without any restraints, sharing deeply personal stories, and trusting them to be there for him the way he needs. This is something that I can definitely see the magic in that. There is a part of me that, as much as I know that I need therapy, and I am pursuing that again over the last couple of years, I'm also very much dreaming about and envisioning having a best friend again. But having a proper best friend this time, because over the last 13 years, I've had a very deep look at a lot of things and realized that I settled for a lot of bullshit in the name of being friends with somebody. And I allowed myself to be mistreated a lot of the times, and never had a best friendship where I felt like I was the number one. I was always the backup, the option, the third wheel, whatever you want to call it. So for me, when I see two people truly having a solid friendship the way Harry and Ron have, the way Harry and Hermione have, the way Harry and Hagrid have, that is truly a magical thing. The magic of keeping promises. We learn later in the series about the unbreakable vow, so I'm not going to dive into this, but we have already seen where this form of real-world magic has occurred in Harry's world. Specifically in Chamber of Secrets, his promise to nearly headless Nick to attend the Death Day party, and Harry's promise to Dumbledore to not go looking for the Mirror of Erised again back in Sorcerer's Stone. I learned the hard way at a very young age a couple of different lessons. Keeping my mouth shut is one of them, something I wish my mother would very much learn. But keeping a promise. I don't promise anything to anybody anymore if I simply don't want to do something, or if I know that in some way, shape, or form I'm not going to be able to keep that promise to them. So I am very specific anymore about the promises that I do make, because of the magic in being able to keep promises to the people you care about. The magic of forgiveness. Harry forgiving Dobby for making him miss the train, for almost getting him expelled by smashing the dessert, for, the rogue bludger and ultimately ending up in the hospital wing because of Professor Lockhart's ineptitudes. Harry forgives Dobby. And there's a lot of magic in forgiveness because ultimately Harry set Dobby free. You know, we just talked about that in the last chapter. The overwhelming power of forgiveness upon your own psyche is what feels amazing. I know you've all heard the axiom, forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. And I can speak to this one personally because I have truly forgiven my father for his verbal abuse. I know this because I feel lighter and I can talk about my experiences with his abuse without losing my cool, without getting overly emotional. And that level of inner peace is what I'm striving to attain for myself moving forward. So getting yourself to a point where, you know, the anger, the hurt, the shame, the desire for retribution towards somebody who has harmed you in some way really is for you when you get it right. You know, I'm not saying that anything my father did, oh, it's okay. No, it wasn't okay. It was absolutely wrong. And he should have had the foresight to be a better person and to see where he was making, you know, mistakes. But he's also very emotionally immature. So, you know, those discussions that I attempted to have never panned out. So I had to find a way to let it go for it to not consume me anymore. And that's truly the magic of what forgiveness does when it's done right. You feel free from the shame, the anger, etc., from what that other person did to you. Just checking my notes. Yeah, okay. So those are just some of the real world forms of magic that I have personally experienced throughout my life. And we really could go on. I mean, I had quite a list going. But for the time being, we're going to wrap this up for the week. Thank you for indulging me with some of my witchy woo-woo talk here this week. But there are some powerful lessons there for you, I believe, if you choose to dig deeper for yourself. Again, I'm not telling you to do tarot, but find something that'll help you cut through that clutter the way tarot did for me. And I'm only saying that. And start looking for those real world forms of magic around you. Okay? Next week, we will be talking about Chapter 2. I love this one. Aunt Marge's big mistake. Until then, start looking for that real world magic I just said in your real world. And do take care with that monster book of monsters. Yeah, they're kind of tricky. Anyway, I'll see you next week, everyone.